week has gone by. It's been a very hectic week when it's come to a court case here with Oscar Pistorius' bail hearing. Chriselda, welcome to the studio. We've been speaking to you outside the Pretoria Magistrates Court, so it's nice to have you here. There's been a media scramble to cover this case. I mean, just take us to the court. What has it been like there?
Leanne, I don't think the Justice Department anticipated that there'd be such a massive interest worldwide to cover the Oscar Pistorius bail hearing. There's more than 100 journalists that have come from around the world to cover this hearing, and basically everybody's been scrambling for space. It's quite preposterous to think that you're going to fit 100 journalists, or even more than that, because it's camera person and journalist, or photographer and journalist, coming from one media house to fit into this court. But what basically happened was, after that, the Justice Department had seen that there'd been serious problems regarding that, they decided to set up the adjoining courtroom so that journalists who could not fit into the main courtroom would be able to watch the proceedings from the overflow room. So once that happened, we thought that there were going to be problems that would be sorted out, but unfortunately that didn't happen. The following day, journalists who were sitting in the overflow room were unable to see or even hear the proceedings. They had to file off the tweets of their colleagues. I mean, in journalistic terms, that's just not allowed in this industry. It's not your information. You're taking somebody else's and putting it out as your own. So a lot of frustration from journalists, you know, not very good comments coming from the international journalists. We're really expecting that better measures would be put in place to accommodate us all. But finally, yesterday, I understand that the guys worked overnight in order to rectify the problem. Yesterday was much better. There was an accreditation room that was set up. Journalists were able to go and accredit. One media house was allowed to go in from basically each organization, and things went relatively smoothly yesterday, but a lot of pushing happened over the past few days.
No, I can just imagine. I mean, I was hearing, we were reading on Twitter, because that's our main source of information. It's amazing how news has changed
it has.
Over this particular trial. I mean, news, you don't wait for the next news bulletin, you wait for the next second, because Twitter has really become, I suppose, the news sense there. But I want to really talk more about the case and what happened after the state pushed for Pistorius to be charged with a Schedule 6.
Well, the state had been pushing for that initially, saying that they want Oscar Pistorius to be charged with premeditated murder. After the arguments continued, the magistrate, Desmond Naya, ruled that Oscar Pistorius be charged with a Schedule 6, which meant premeditated murder. He would face those charges. With that, Leanne, in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, meant that Oscar Pistorius would need to prove exceptional circumstances in order for him to be granted bail. He would need to convince the court and provide evidence that it was in the interest of justice for him to be granted bail. That's when we started seeing Oscar Pistorius breaking down, always having his head in his hands and crying. You could literally hear him breathe heavily if you're sitting just a few blocks away from him. So quite hectic to watch from inside there, the emotions that were coming from the family and from the accused himself. Yeah,
and the emotions continued when we saw that affidavit coming out from Oscar Pistorius himself. Talk us through that.
Well, that's basically, Leanne, where we started to understand the version of events as painted by Oscar Pistorius, saying that he had no intention to kill Reeva Steenkamp, that he thought when Reeva spent the evening on February the 13th, in the early hours of February the 14th on Valentine's Day, he heard that noise coming from the bathroom or the toilet area, and subsequently went to investigate, didn't switch on the light. He says he's previously been a victim of burglaries, went to investigate and called out to the person who he believed at the time was a burglar. When the person didn't respond, he opened fire, and when he called to Reeva to tell her to call the police, there was no response. When he investigated that as well, he then found that Reeva's not in the bedroom. Well, I guess she might be in the bathroom. He took a cricket bat, he says, hit the door. Some of the pallets came off. That's how he accessed the door, which we understand at the time had been locked. That's how he gained access to the toilet area and found Reeva Steenkamp there. He says she was still alive, but then later died in her arms.
All right, now, these are the stories that are going about. Obviously, this is still a bail application. I mean, this is what's incredible about this. This is a trial within a trial.
It is.
Hilton Botha, revelation that came yesterday that the investigating officer is now also on murder charges. He's got these charges. They were suspended, then brought against, just recently they were brought against him again. He's been taken off the case. What has this done for the state's case?
Well, basically, you know, when Hilton Botha came, he was the state's key witness in this, and that's where we really got to see, or a picture was painted of the crime scene, basically what was inside Oscar Pistorius' home on the morning of the 14th of February. Hilton Botha basically said he found Reva Steenkamp at the bottom of the stairs. She was dead. She had been covered with a towel. He went upstairs and also found 4 cell phones. Those 4 cell phones, he says, 2 Blackberries and 2 iPhones. The 2 Blackberries had not been used in months, and that there was no indication from the iPhones that they'd been used on that morning to call for any kind of help. He also questioned ammunition that was found in the house, saying that the ammunition in the house was illegal, that there was testosterone. He first said steroids and later changed to testosterone, and said that he also found needles in the house, and very crucially saying that they received a statement from one of the witnesses who said that they heard screams just a few hours or an hour before they heard gunshots coming from the home of Oscar Pistorius. So basically that is the picture that he painted. When that came under cross-examination, that's where we really started to see that perhaps Hilton Botha, the investigating officer in this case, had not done his homework. A lot of questions about the ammunition. The defense saying that the ammunition actually belonged to the father of Oscar Pistorius, and that we found the witness who had given that statement lived about 600 meters from the home of Oscar Pistorius. And when they asked Hilton Botha, would he say for certain that those would have been the voices of Oscar Pistorius and Reva Steenkamp, as the witness, he says, had stated there were screams and some arguing, he said no. So a lot of inconsistencies in that case with the testosterone, we understand. We found out that there was actually a herbal content that was actually in there. But also heard from the NPA that that hadn't been tested. So a lot of that came through, and in the arguments, basically Hilton Botha saying he couldn't verify most of what was said by the witness, and a lot of the contents coming into question about phones.
Well, now Hilton off the case, we've got a new state witness that's coming into this and going to be taking over. But very quickly, Chriselda, let's talk through today's events. What can we expect? Are we going to get a verdict today, whether Oscar gets bail or not? Will this be announced today?
We're really expecting that. When we spoke to the National Prosecuting Authority, they did indicate that they want to wrap this up by Friday, which is today. We're expecting the prosecutor, Gerrie Nel, to give his last heads of argument. That's expected to take just an hour. So we're really hoping once that is done, there'll probably be an adjournment for about an hour or two, and then we'll probably be expecting the magistrate Desmond Naya to come back and to give us some kind of verdict in this case, whether Oscar Pistorius will get bail or he will not.
All right, Chriselda Lewis, SABC journalist, been covering the story since it started on Monday. So much has happened this week, and hopefully today will be the announcement whether Paralympian Oscar Pistorius gets bail or not.